pumped up, Jay. Really getting me going right now. Got some warriors in this room. I'm gonna have to just whip out a barbell. There's actually one in the closet. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Inside the Labyrinth podcast. Season 7, episode 2 now. We just released season 7, episode 1, I think literally 2 days ago with 10-8 memes. So make sure you guys check that out. That's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all major platforms. And you guys already know the deal. Please, please, please share, subscribe, whatever you guys can do to help us out. And also Red for Responders. This is it's not sponsored by. This is powered by Red for Responders. And let's not forget about Ice Shaker right here. A Red for Responders Ice Shaker. Visit our website or iceshaker.com. Get the Reps Ice Shaker. 50% of all Reps Ice Shakers purchase goes back to our nonprofit. Check out Arsenal Athletics. Use the code RFR at checkout, and you get 10% off. We have our apparel there. You can buy a bunch of strongman and powerlifting bars, knee sleeves, elbow sleeves. I have their wrist wraps and their and one of the sleeves. I'm trying to remember, but they're really, really good. Phil's a military vet and a huge supporter of Red for Responders. We have our book on Amazon, Building a Resiliency and Conquering the Job. So please check that out, Red for Responders book. And yeah, we're in person live, as you guys can see. We got our man Zach making it happen behind the curtain. So Zach, we appreciate you for being here today.
Thank you, brother.
And it's gonna be very, very intense, and a story that hopefully many of you take on with you for the rest of your life and pass it around. So without further ado, I'm gonna kick it over, like I always say, the man, the myth, the legend, the plant-based poppy, the real Jumpman Jay.
How is it going? Thank you, Frankie, for that lovely introduction. For our Reps for Responders audience, we have a great episode for you today. This was sparked by Nick. Nick was like, listen, man, I got a friend that goes to the gym with me. She's got a great story. You guys got to get her on the show. So, you guys had that event. I was unable to make it. I was out of the country, and we got it done. So today, without further ado, we are here with Nikki Balkau. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am very excited for this interview. I've heard a lot about you, okay?
But I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad
thing. No, like all great things, okay. Never bad things. But Nick spoke very highly of you, and then forwarded me your Instagram. And as I start going through, I'm like, oh, so she has a story to her. So for us, we like to start the journey where things get very interesting. So I'll let you dictate that. Okay. Normally we start with like high school sports and stuff like that, but you say you have a really interesting story, so we'll let you get in there.
Yeah.
All right, so you start. Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in Connecticut.
Okay.
I ended up moving all over. I lived in Connecticut, New Hampshire, California, Boston, now Jersey, but I originated in Connecticut.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was there from birth until about 8th grade. I grew up pretty poor. Didn't come from a lot of money. My parents ended up divorcing when I was very young. I was 7. My brother was 2 to 3. And soon after that, my stepfather came into the picture.
Okay.
So my mother and him were together. Well, actually, they're still together. They've never split. But
okay.
Wasn't the easiest childhood. I guess if we want to get right into it, my stepfather molested me for the majority of my childhood, starting from 7th grade up until 10th grade. So, yeah, that's where I started from, I guess.
Ooh, set the tone with that, huh?
Yeah.
Wasn't expecting to hear that.
Well, thanks for sharing that right off the bat. So, like I said, it's going to be.
That's why we're here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's people that go through things like that. Yeah, rip the Band-Aid off. This story is going to inspire somebody to maybe speak up or
I hope so.
Find some resiliency in that.
I really hope so. I mean, fast forwarding a little bit, but I actually ended up pressing charges later in my life.
I was going to ask that question.
Yeah, so I'll beat you to it.
Okay.
But I was early to mid-20s.
Okay.
And I ended up finally speaking up and sharing what had happened to me. I had kept it a secret my entire life.
Now, so it's one question I have to ask usually. So when this was going on, did you even try to say something at some point? Never. You just didn't say anything?
Never.
Okay. Why?
was terrified.
Terrified. Okay.
I was absolutely terrified. I remember when it first started happening, I was not sure if I should tell my mom. Do I tell my dad? Like, he was the next father figure to me aside from my father.
When you say dad, your biological
Yeah, my
father?
biological father. Yeah.
Okay.
And I just didn't tell anybody. I was a kid. I was, so confused about what was going on.
Like 12, 11? You said 7th grade, right?
7th grade. I was young for my grade. About 11, 10, 11. Yeah.
And like the defense mechanism was just to, I mean,
Shut
I don't
down.
want to go back. I don't want to open it
Oh,
up.
no. Listen, everything's on the table, so
Okay.
don't worry.
So when this was happening, obviously you knew it was not normal. Or did it get to the point where it became like, this is my new normal and I just go on with my everyday life?
I don't remember really having that thought of like, oh, this is normal or not normal. I just knew I wasn't safe. And then it became my new normal.
Was your brother still living with you and like the moving around?
Yeah.
So it happened in Connecticut and then you guys moved to,
New Hampshire.
and it still happens in New Hampshire?
Yes.
Okay. And
That's
then
crossing state lines.
you go to New Hampshire, and now, how was like your friends in Connecticut? Did you have like close friends? Were you kind of like
Kind of.
quiet?
I mean, yes, I did, but I moved around a lot as a kid too. So I was in various school districts for most of my childhood. So it was really hard for me to establish like really good friendships as a kid. I remember I can count on one hand really how many like real childhood friends I have. So that was really hard for me. And from early on, like I couldn't trust anybody. So from the very beginning, had a very difficult time being vulnerable with people, opening up to people, connecting with people, because I had this dirty little secret that nobody could know, right? So I felt like if I got too close to somebody, then I would spill the beans. Or if I slept over a friend's house and I was talking in the middle of the night, like in my sleep, which I used to do, I was terrified that I would share the secret. So I kept everybody at arm's length for the majority of my life, actually, for that reason.
So let's call this guy POS. Okay, so
Yeah.
POS.
POS,
When
yeah.
does POS come into your life? Like when does he, I guess, start to date your mother?
I was about 8, so it was very shortly after my parents' divorce, or it might have actually been like kind of overlapping. I don't know. My memories are like.
So he's in your life already for like 3-4 years, but before the first incident happens.
Yes. However, he had started grooming me from the very beginning.
How so?
Like he would make offhanded comments. Like if I were, I mean, this is going to be really weird, but whatever, I'll just say it, is that we were like sitting at a dinner table one time and I was eating a sandwich, and I specifically remember him saying in front of my mother, mind you, that I should keep in mind to eat the crust on the bread because it would make my breasts grow. And I was 8 years old. So that's a weird thing to say.
Very weird.
And he would just make comments like that for
I've never heard of
the.
that.
I never heard of that either, but sick
it
individual anyway.
was very bizarre. But that's how he would start to groom me, is he would make those kinds of comments, very sexualized, urging me to explore my own sexuality at 8, 9, 10 years old. Yeah. And then we ended up actually hosting a foreign exchange student from Germany.
Oh, shit.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm very animated. You
No,
have to
that's
excuse
okay.
me.
So am I. Don't worry. And I'm not sure exactly what had happened there because I was so young and I don't really remember everything. But she abruptly left, and the cops were involved, and she had made accusations about him. I don't remember all the details. They had interviewed me.
How old is she?
She was in high school at the time.
Okay, so she's old. You said your brother was younger or older than you? Sorry.
Younger. He's 5 years younger.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was, a lot of that.
I'm getting a little charged up right now. I'm getting a little angry.
What was the relationship with POS and your mom?
Yeah. Like, that's
Very
what
tumultuous.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was about to say, it sounds as if that they didn't have a really great
No.
relationship.
And she was, he abused her too, not physically or anything like that, but
Emotionally, put her
emotionally.
down and things like
And
that?
I have a lot of empathy for my mother because she did the best that she could with the tools that she had.
Yes.
And when she
I
left,
like that comment.
when she left my father, I love my father to death, and he is a wonderful man, but they didn't have a great relationship either. So they divorced, and she immediately started dating this guy, my stepdad, and
POS.
Yes, exactly, POS. And she fell into the same pattern that she did with my father. And their relationship was all yelling, throwing things, name calling. I mean, it was very toxic. And he had such a hold on her that she could not escape him.
Substances involved? Was he a drinker? Or
Yeah,
any
he
type
was
of-
a drinker,
That's
smoker.
going to be my next question. Good question, Frank.
Yeah. So he was definitely an alcoholic. And he just had complete control over her. And she's not as strong-minded as I would say even I am. And so she wasn't able to even recognize within herself like what to do or how to fix the problem and how to better herself to get out of that situation.
There's something that comes to my head, and I'm going to ask this question later down the road. Just sorry, forgive me. Keep going.
Oh no, that's okay. Yeah, so I mean, I grew up in a very chaotic and abusive household, I guess. Well, yeah, you can say.
Let me ask a question, right? So, like, let's fast forward a little bit and let's get to like high school. How did that affect your high school career? Because I'm pretty sure, like, you were like in like middle school age when this is happening, right? Now you get into high school, right? And you know, 9th, 10th grade is when girls start to see boys and want to date. How did that affect your dating life, or like your relationships with like friend groups and then men?
Well, I learned very early on that sex means love, or at least so I thought when I was a kid because of, you know, what had started to happen.
Yes.
So I lost my virginity very early. I was incredibly promiscuous through high school, through like early to mid 20s. And so I had a really unhealthy relationship with men and with what sex was, what sexual consent was, any of that.
It's kind of hard to navigate those waters if you don't really, you didn't have a healthy startup.
Right.
So, and you didn't have a great example of a man around you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that could dictate the.
Yeah. So that just totally warped my perception of what love is. And at the core of it, like I just so deeply and badly wanted to be loved and to feel love. So I chased that feeling by engaging with men and sexually, relationship wise, emotionally. Like I was just desperate for it. And I would go out and try to get it and get that feeling any way that I could.
What year did you graduate high school?
2007.
Okay, I'm just trying to see the time frame with technology and everything like that.
Yeah.
It's like MySpace, AIM,
MySpace, AIM, yeah. Instagram
my
had,
era.
or not Instagram.
Facebook just
MySpace,
came
AIM.
out.
Facebook just started to come out, and it was when it was only for college kids.
Okay, so that's really early on in the Facebook game.
Yeah.
2007, I was really caught for 2 years, Frankie.
Wow. I think I was
game
a
young.
sophomore in high school.
Yeah, he was a little baby. But okay, so you graduate 2007. Did you play any sports in high school? I got to lighten this up just a little bit. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, please do. So I danced actually for most of my life.
Okay.
I started dancing when I was 7, and I did everything.
Ballet, classical, what are you doing?
Tap, hip hop, jazz, ballet, point, lyrical.
So you can cut a rug, huh?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right.
Yes, it's one of my skills that I keep in my back pocket.
All right.
So that was I was going to ask you, but one last question about high school was any like ways to escape. So dancing was like a hobby. Was there any other
Yes.
ways to like where you just forgot about what everything was going down, or?
I mean, dancing was pretty much it.
That
I
way
did. I played basketball. I was not very good. The only reason I got onto my team was because I grew up in rural New Hampshire, and my graduating class was 36 kids. So
Wow.
really by default.
All right, Nikki, you made the team.
Yeah. So a little bit of a participation trophy there, but it's okay. I wasn't great, but I loved it. So I played basketball, and I played a little bit of tennis too.
Oh, tennis.
Yeah.
Okay. I used to think tennis was like not a hard sport, and then I went and played it and got my
Oh my
ass
God,
handed
it's
to
so
me.
hard.
It is extremely hard. You have
It's
to be very
incredibly
athletic.
difficult. Yeah.
It is not for the weak-hearted, I will say
Coordinated,
that.
yeah.
And I don't have that hand-eye coordination.
was about
Also,
to say
probably
that.
what I wasn't very good at basketball. The whole dribbling thing, very difficult.
Yeah. Basketball's not easy by any means, but
And I'm very short, so that doesn't
Yes.
really work to my advantage here.
listen, we're gonna put her Instagram in the
Jay already
description.
called
right?
it out. Don't let you know.
And she walked in here, and I was expecting her to be like 5'8", 5'9", and this little munchkin comes walking in. She's like 5'3". I'm like, what the hell's going on here, man? I swore you were like 5'8", 5'9". I'm like, man, I gotta.
Sorry to play these tricks on you.
It's all good. I'll take it. So, all right. So you have dancing. Was there any other outlet that you had other than like dancing, some sports?
No, that's pretty much it.
That was it.
Yeah. And I mean, I partied on the weekend like any high school kid does. And I guess I had a little bit of a problem with alcohol through high school because when I would drink, I would only drink to get blackout drunk. So
Really?
I guess
there was no in between. It was just
no.
How old were you when you think you had your first drink?
I was 14. No, 13, 14. Yeah.
Shiza.
Yeah.
It's young, man.
Yeah.
Before we move into the college phase, I gotta ask, what like the last time that did happen? What was there something that like why did it just stop out of nowhere? Did something happen?
Sort of. So when it would happen, I would have no response. So you know how there's like a bunch of different responses to reactions to trauma, like fight, flight, fawn, freeze. I froze. So in the entire time that it was going on, I never reacted. Like it would happen in the middle of the night, so I would just pretend to be asleep the entire time. So the last time that it had happened, I had finally had enough. And while it was happening, I had told him to stop. And I think that scared him because I had never reacted before in the 4 years it was going on.
Uh-huh.
And then it never happened again. And that was that.
Really?
And then we just continued to coexist and live in our household until I graduated. And I went as far away as human possibly.
I was gonna say you probably went to
Think
that.
anybody in the house had an inkling idea?
Yes. I think my mom knew. I don't know if she knew exactly what was going on.
But she knew something was
But
going on.
she knew something was going on.
Mothers do usually know that
Yes.
instinct. Man.
I'm going to say this: where there's smoke, there's fire, right? So when that foreign exchange student left the house abruptly and police were involved, that might have been the first
What state
indicator.
was that happened in?
That happened in Connecticut.
Okay, so we're in Connecticut to New Hampshire
To
as
New
of right now.
Hampshire. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, crossing state lines, even worse. All right, I got to lighten it up just a little bit. We're gonna dibble and dab.
Yes. Otherwise, it's just too depressing. Let's be honest.
So you go to college.
Yeah.
All right, what college do you go to? What do you major in?
First I went to the Design Institute of San Diego, and I originally went for.
Oh, you really went to the other side of the country.
yeah.
So you graduated, said, I'm dipping, I'm going to
I'm
Cali.
out.
Cali.
Yeah.
She went northeast to fucking
Cali.
far west
Yeah.
Cali.
My dad wanted me to stay local. He wanted me to stay close by. He and I are really close. And
Where
I
was
said,
he living?
he's in Connecticut.
The whole time you stayed there?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm like, no, I'm out of here. I need to get out. Like,
Let me ask you a
goodbye.
question. I'm gonna go dark again. Did your biological father know?
He does now.
He does now.
Yes.
So he didn't know this whole time.
No.
I would have went to jail.
And there was no thought ever through what happened, like, do I tell dad?
I don't know. Probably. But at a certain point, it just became so normalized that
Yeah,
I was
'cause-
like, oh, this is just life.
Yeah, I think what it sounds like to me is that she just like disconnected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, out-of-body
it-
experience.
Yeah, just let me
Yeah.
go to another place while this is happening because this is going to be par for the course.
Yeah.
And then whatever, I just go back to reality when it's done, and I just kind of keep going on with my life.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that after it had happened, so it stopped in sophomore year. So for the rest of high school, I remember just honestly blocking it out. Like it wasn't a conscious thought when we were living in the same household, having family dinners. Like it was just like, oh, this is my stepdad. Like not this.
Monster.
That's
Monster
a brain trauma
that-
response to, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? I had a conversation with my therapist one time, and she asked me about something that happened to me when I was a child, right? And if she didn't ask me the question the way she asked me the question, I didn't even remember that it happened. It was such a dark thing that happened to me that I buried it in the back of my mind. And she asked the question in a certain way, and I was like, oh. And it kind of like kicked up my memory, and then I started explaining the incident. But I had legitimately like blacked it out and like it just didn't exist anymore. So when she says that, it kind of resonates with me just a little bit because a lot of the times when traumatic things happen to us, we just repress them in our mind, we throw them in the back of our mind, and we kind of just keep it pushing.
100%.
Because that's how in essence, that's resilience. You know what I'm saying? Being able to push forward and circumstances like that. So let's go back to college. All right. So you're in San Diego.
So
what do you
advanced in
major in?
college, interior design.
Okay.
Yeah, so I did
Feng
that.
shui,
a
Okay.
little bit of feng shui. I actually really wanted to get into architecture.
Okay.
But for whatever reason, I decided to throw that out the window and not totally switch directions. I ended up going for fashion design and product development. And I switched schools, went to the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, and I lived in San Diego for 2 years. I did my last year in LA, and then I moved back home.
What did you do when you came back home?
Well, I only went back home because I had gotten married at barely 20 years old.
Barely 20 years old.
Yes, I think I was 20 for like a month.
Okay, so I got to dissect this marriage, right? So you're a 20-year-old newlywed.
Yes.
How do you meet this young man?
So we started dating in high school. And yes, and we had broken up, I think right before my senior year.
Okay.
And he was in the military. So he was in the Air Force, and he went off into the Air Force. He was stationed in Qatar, and I was in California, and we just started our relationship up again, long distance.
Okay.
So the majority of our relationship was long distance. He came home one time for leave, engaged, or proposed rather. We got engaged. 6 months later, we got married. We were not even in the same country. He was, at this point, he was actually in Okinawa, and he filled out whatever paperwork he needed to. I went to the courthouse, said my vows to my roommate at the time. It was all very bizarre.
Okay, listen, I'm here for it, man.
So we got married by proxy, and then after I graduated, I wanted to be a wife. I wanted to settle down. I wanted a family. I'm not even 21 years old at this point.
You're a baby.
I can't even legally drink.
Yeah, you're literally.
But this
a
is
baby.
again going back to like wanting to be loved and wanting love and wanting the perfect like happy family so badly that I would do whatever I had to do.
Okay, so
I abandoned my dreams for a hot minute, and I was like, I'm just gonna go, be this military wife, travel wherever he has to be, support him. Like I'll figure something out along the way. And then shortly after, he got kicked out of the military.
Court martial.
Yeah.
What did he do? Do you know what he did, or he just kind of told you,
not
I ain't in
really.
the military? All right, we don't even need to dig into that.
Yeah. No.
All right, so he gets court-martialed, then what happens next?
So then
This shit is getting good. This is getting so good.
So then we moved back home in New Hampshire.
Okay.
We lived together in his,
So now you're back in New Hampshire.
yeah, his grandmother's top story or top floor or whatever. It's like his own little like apartment setup sort of thing.
Gotcha.
And we broke up like 6 months later after living together. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So, okay, right. So you break up, you get a divorce, right? That goes through, and then what's the next move after that?
We actually didn't end up getting divorced for like 2 years. But
Yeah, it's a process.
Yeah.
Separated.
But I had ended up moving down here to New Jersey actually, like maybe 6 months
You're
later.
still 20, or were you 21 yet?
I was 21 at this point.
Time frame,
Yeah.
okay.
So wow, I've been in New Jersey since I was 21.
Look at that.
Look at that.
Okay, so
But does the college experience, before we keep moving, the college experience, we'll go like, we got the Darth Vader side and like the Luke Skywalker side. We'll do. How was like your college experience overall?
It was really tough.
Mm.
Yeah,
You stopped dancing?
I did stop dancing.
When and why?
About, I think after my first year, because I couldn't afford it, number one. I ended up living in my car and motels. I was working 2 jobs, going to school full time. And I was just trying
check
to
in with mom at all at that time?
Yeah, she was still at this point like really involved in my life, and we hadn't yet addressed any of the other stuff yet, so it was all very like status quo. But I really struggled in college because I'm like battling all of these demons and just this really hard stuff that I'm trying to process. Actually, at that point, I wasn't even trying to process. I was just trying to survive and just live. So I was in complete survival mode, honestly, I would say the majority of my life up until probably recently. And that's a stressful place to live.
absolutely. I mean,
Yeah, the
I couldn't even
Minotaur in
imagine,
the labyrinth
bro.
for
Yeah.
that long, man.
Yeah,
A lot of
and-
people don't make it out,
And
literally.
at that point too, I had ended up developing anorexia and bulimia. So I started about a 6-year battle with that. And that just like completely deteriorated me for those chunk of years.
Okay, so that brings us to what, like 27? 26?
Before that, I would say, I mean, really, I started having like issues with food when I was in high school still. And that was a way for me to like establish control, right? Because I had no control when I was a kid. I had no control in my home. I had no control over anything, is what it felt like. So I had started having a really bad relationship with food and my body early on, which I mean, I think is completely a descendant of the abuse and the trauma that
Absolutely,
I had
yeah,
gone
it's
through.
closely correlated, yeah.
Yeah. So, so that was probably until 24, 25. I might be a little bit off base here because the years kind of all blend together at
Yeah,
this
you
point.
say that.
So we'll have to go. Let's go. So you leave,
Early to mid
you leave-
20s.
So we'll go back to you leave that day and on the top of the window that you leave the castle, right? You're
Yeah.
like, I'm out of here. Now where?
Wait, where am I leaving at this point?
You're leaving grandma's house.
Oh, okay. So I moved in with my uncle down here in New Jersey in Lodi, and I just started a new life down here. Okay. And at the time, I was still struggling with my eating disorders, and I hadn't really established, sorry, a lot of friends at this point, and I'm just trying to navigate like a new state, a new city. I was trying to get my career jump started in the city. I thought New York City was like this big, glamorous, like amazing place
The
to
Big
live
Apple,
and
they
be.
say. It'll be fun,
Yeah.
they say.
You can make it there. You can make it.
And
Make
as
it
a-
anywhere, yeah.
And as a kid, like I just had this dream of moving to New York. I thought it was the best city in the world, and I just like needed to live here. Like I would come down.
Did
and
you ever
just,
visit it before?
Yeah, I would
Okay.
visit it, and I was just
Rudest
mesmerized.
place I've ever been, I tell you that. Dead ass, son. Like, there's just rude people who, like, you can't say good morning or good afternoon.
Yeah, my bubble got burst really quickly in understanding that that's not the case. Listen, I love New York, but it was not what I thought it was.
I'm a New Yorker through and through, and I would tell somebody, never come here.
Yeah.
It is not for everyone.
It was not what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think like I was a kid and also very much trying to escape my reality.
Mm-hmm.
So I just latched on to really whatever I could, thinking like, oh, this is going to get me out of this hell that I'm living in, right?
Wow, man, this is heavy, dude.
Yeah,
And
it all
we're
goes
27
back.
minutes in, bro. This is heavy.
Yeah, this is getting really.
They don't get
nuts.
heavy till like 35 minutes.
No.
This
This
thing
is
is heavy.
getting-
We're
Shots
27
were
minutes
fired
in.
right off the bat.
Well, when you guys said to start with my like as early back as my childhood, I'm like,
Oh, shit.
Well,
Did they know? See, we had no idea.
there's really no way to ease into that.
Yeah, I mean, that was, no, it was just,
Yeah.
they just threw it out there. Okay, so,
Lodi, right? Trying to like get a job in the city, and what happens?
Yeah, I mean, I lived there for a while, a few years.
How's your uncle relationship?
Really good.
Okay.
Yeah, he's
Dad's
awesome.
brother or mom's brother?
Mom's.
Okay.
Yeah. I had a few boyfriends at that point.
And still nobody knows.
Still nobody knows.
Okay.
No. But at this point, I'm really working heavily to like beat these eating disorders and like try to overcome that.
how'd you combat that?
In a very unconventional way, I think. So, like, it was so bad where I really should have gone to a therapist. I should have gone to a doctor. I should have gone to a treatment center. And really, the only reason I really started to address it was because my best friend from high school, she's still my best friend to this day, and it's actually, she plays a role in my story with my stepfather later on too, with confronting me about him. And so she flat out told me, like, listen, I know you're making yourself throw up. I know that you're starving yourself. Like, I hear you. I can see it. She's like, you need help. Like, she was very direct with me. And I honestly think she saved my
Good
life
friend. Really
because nobody else would say anything.
Throughout that time, you never went to like a regular doctor, like a.
No. I went to the ER once because I was having really bad stomach issues because I was throwing up like 4 times a day.
All this,
And I was in so much
and all
pain.
the stress of.
But I couldn't tell them what it was from. Like, I knew why I was not feeling well because of that. But I mean, it was very obvious that I was battling that. I had lost so much weight. I was a skeleton. And my family, nobody said anything. None of my friends said anything.
Why do you think they didn't say anything?
I think it's easier to
Turn a blind eye.
And it's also, I mean, it's a tough topic to
Not
bring
my
up.
daughter. She's fine. Like accepting.
It's
that
an
as
uncomfortable
well.
Yeah.
place.
And I think that a lot of people don't know how to handle something of that nature or having tough conversations and being on like direct about it. And I'm not really sure beyond that.
No, I think you got it right. I mean,
Yeah.
to have an uncomfortable conversation with someone you love is extremely hard. Some people rather leave things unsaid than say something.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like it's more of fear of the outcome. You know, like sometimes people hold us like in this place, this like pedestal, if you will, right? And it'll probably break them if they hear that you're struggling or going through certain things, so they just rather not say anything. That's just what I've experienced in life. It's just people just don't want to have these uncomfortable conversations because they're scared of what the outcome might be, and so they just leave it alone. And then thank God, I mean, you're still here, but like you always hear that stuff at like funerals or like wakes, like
I should have
said something,
Yeah.
I should have
done
did
this.
something, but by that point it's already too late because we don't have a memory card on life, right? It's like one and done, dude. Like you can't pick up and start off again. It is what it is. But I just know just from experience that most people refuse to have these difficult conversations because they're scared of the outcome.
And scared to also hear the truth.
Yes.
And face the reality
Yes.
of what's
Can't handle
Absolutely.
the truth.
of what's happening.
Absolutely.
And I think it's also easier to just think like, oh, somebody else will address
Rectify the
it. That's
problem.
not my
Yep.
job,
Okay.
So part of me feels a little bit let down by the people around me because, I mean, I was wasting away in front of everyone. And people would make comments
Do
about
we have a weight at that time? Would you had a guess?
sub 90.
Get out of here. What do you weigh now?
I weigh about 130.
Yeah, I mean, she's pretty jacked too.
Yeah.
She's short.
And I'm a small person, so
Yeah, she's tiny. She's tiny.
hey, not that tiny, okay? I'm jacked.
And she's jacked. She's jacked. But I'm thinking, I'm like,
The ant, right? Pound for pound, strongest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Legit.
thank you.
but like,
Richard Hawthorne.
like I see her lift, and I'm like, I'm pretty good with like guessing weights, right? So I'm like, oh, she's probably gonna be like 128, 130 something, whatever. But I might have been a little off too because I thought you were taller. Then when you walked in, I kind of put it together. But so how do you rectify everything and then get like going again?
Oh, right. I totally trailed off. Sorry.
Yeah,
I
I got it. Like that's
that
my
will
job.
happen.
We're in the labyrinth here.
Yeah,
baby.
that will happen.
I corral things.
So at that point, after I really realized, like, okay, this is a problem. Like, I'm really unhealthy. This is not okay. I just researched all the time about it. Like, I would just read over and over and over all the terrible things that it does to your body to, like, I guess almost scare myself or, like, make me see, like, what you are doing to yourself is killing you.
And this is real.
And this is real. And if I could see it in black and white, and if I could get it through my brain, like not eating is doing X, Y, and Z to your body. If that could just shock me enough to just stop, then so be it. And it eventually did. I would start to almost be in a competition with myself where I would count the days of how many days I could go without starving myself or without binging and purging.
Recovery 101.
Yeah. And then I would get to one day, great. And then second day, I'd do it again. And then I would just build little by little by little until eventually I just stopped.
Okay.
All on your own.
Yeah.
Kind
What about when your friend called you out?
Oh, that was like,
that was early before the research?
yeah, that was years and years prior. Like,
Like high school?
no, before I had moved down to New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think I was actually still married at the time.
And he didn't say anything?
No. But we were kids too.
yeah.
And I don't know.
All right, I gotta lighten it up now.
Yeah. But he knew, but he didn't like,
Didn't say anything.
yeah.
Shit, man.
Yeah. So I have a lot of abandonment issues.
I can see why.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's reel it back in. How do you get into lifting? Or is that way later? Did I skip something?
No.
If I'm skipping anything, please let me know.
It's all kind of connected. Like I also started with lifting and working out very early because I wanted to control how many calories I was burning and all of this. So I would exercise like obsessively.
Really?
Yeah. Like, so on top of the anorexia, the bulimia, like I would just work out all the time just to like burn as many
What
calories.
kind of workouts were we doing?
I would do high intensity like cardio stuff. Like I would just run. I would do yoga. I mean, I would do anything. But I started to, sorry, my throat was really dry. Started to get into lifting weights like towards the end of the eating disorders because I was trying to like.
All right, so we're chronologically on pace.
Yeah, we're on pace. So I was trying to like establish a healthy lifestyle and get strong and overcome these eating disorders. And so that's really how I found myself in the gym. But I didn't start really seriously lifting until probably a few years after that. I lived in Boston at the time. So I had ditched New Jersey.
Boston.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So you said goodbye to the dirty Jers and
Temporarily, because I'm
you
back
went
now.
to Boston?
Yeah. I don't want to talk about it.
Fucking Boston.
So I had gotten out of a relationship, and it at the time was devastating.
Tumultuous
to me.
relationship. Or was it
No, not so
not
much.
so much tumultuous? The outcome was devastating?
The outcome was
did
devastating.
you feel safe with this person?
Yeah. Oh my God, I loved him to death. Loved him.
So why
to
did
death.
it end if you loved him to death?
Well, I was really not in a place where I should have been in a relationship. Like I was not okay. Like I needed to get myself together before I could be with somebody else. Like I just had too many issues and I was lashing out. Like I just had so many unhealthy behaviors and actions and reactions and responses and ways of communicating. Like that was a very, very unhealed version of myself.
Wow. Damn, it's getting better and better, bro.
Yeah. So we had broken up, honestly, because it was me. I was the problem. I mean, he wasn't that great, but really.
Did you hit him with it's not you, it's me, I got to get out of here?
Well, he broke up with me.
Really?
Yeah. I had almost never really broken up with somebody.
Did he have a Boston accent?
No, he was in Jersey.
Okay, all right, cool. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, I got caught up on Boston. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, we're not in Boston yet. We're about to be.
Yeah. So
by
that
Fenway.
was so devastating to me that I fled the state. Like I could not be here.
Yeah.
What? You fled the
almost
state
fled
and
the
went to
country, yeah.
Boston? How'd you go to fucking
Yeah, so why
Boston?
Boston?
My best friend lived there
I
actually.
was gonna say, please not for another guy.
Yeah,
Please
no,
not for another guy.
not at this point. So she had lived there. This is the same one
Same
that had
one? Okay,
same one
good,
that had
good,
called
good.
me
All right,
out.
so we got a best friend. We got a best.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, she's really great.
Love it. Okay.
Yeah, she's my.
I hope she's gonna listen to this one.
I hope so too. I think she will.
Okay.
Hey, Carolyn, love you. But yeah, so we had moved in together, and I really did this girl so dirty because when
What the fuck is going on? Please bring it.
well, we had lived together once before in New Hampshire. It was after I had gotten divorced, and I needed a place to live. I wasn't going to live with my mother and my stepfather because
Absolutely not.
obviously.
POS.
Yeah. So we had lived together, and about 6 months into our 1-year lease, I decided I got to move to New York. I'm out. And I broke our lease. I mean, I obviously paid for like, what my end of it was, but that's a really shitty position to put somebody in.
Absolutely.
But I was very selfish
This makes sense.
when I was younger. Yeah.
This makes total sense.
Yeah. I was all about myself, and not in a like, oh, I don't care about you
still in
kind of
survival-
way,
you're still in
but I'm
survival
still
mode.
in survival
Survival
mode.
mode,
So
yeah.
it, to me, like subconsciously, I need to take care of myself because nobody else is going to. Like I am responsible for me, and unfortunately, there were so many casualties by default because it was what I had to do to move forward in my life. So I broke our lease, and then I moved to New Jersey. I ended up doing the same thing to her in Boston. I left New Jersey after that relationship. We moved in together, and about 6 months later, Boston wasn't it for me. Was not loving it there, and I couldn't really do anything with my career because I couldn't find a good job that was heavily into like
what
fashion
career is this,
design,
fashion?
product development. Like that's sort of where my roots came from. I mean, I did everything from sourcing, tech design. I mean, so many different facets of the
You're just
industry.
picking up little jobs on the way to pay for this rent.
Yeah. Or I just wasn't working at all. And that doesn't really take you too long to not be able to sustain that very long. And then I got a new job in New Jersey. I'd come down, I interviewed at the Children's Place. And to me at the time, I was like, this is the best thing ever. And I just left. And I broke our lease yet again. It's amazing that she's still my best friend. Like,
She must love you. You hear me?
She does.
Damn.
Yeah, so then I came back to Jersey, and I've been here ever since. And that was probably 8 years ago,
Okay.
give or
You ever
take.
make it to the city?
No.
She said, fuck the
No.
city.
My whole thought process was, if I can, this was like when I first moved here and I was living with my uncle. I'm like, I'll just live here for like 3 to 6 months. I'll save some money, and then I'll start, I'll move into the city. No way.
Oh, yeah.
On a $30,000 year salary? No way.
Not in New York.
No.
It's not going to
So
happen.
now you're back in Jersey.
So now I'm
What
back in
time frame is
Jersey.
this?
This was probably 2015.
Okay.
2014, 2015, give her that, kind of around that point. And then I started powerlifting. So that's when I started that whole thing.
How was that journey?
Really interesting.
How'd you stumble upon powerlifting?
So this
That's
is
a
when
big,
I was in
better
Boston
question.
still, and I was seeing this guy at the gym. It wasn't anything serious. It was like, whatever. And he suggested that I should start powerlifting. And at the time, I was actually interested in bodybuilding. And meanwhile, this is like a year to 2 years after, not even 2 years after I had recovered from the anorexia and the bulimia. And so really bodybuilding is the
Worst thing you could do.
The worst thing I
was
could
gonna
have
say,
done.
that's
So it's
slippery
really,
fucking slope, yeah.
yeah. So it's really a blessing that I was steered in the other direction. I did my first meet and I fell in love with it. And I'm like, wow, this is to feel strong, to be strong, and then to have a goal to work towards. I was all about it. And I dove head first into it for 7 to 8 years. And it was my whole life.
So your first meet, who did the programming, or you just
Myself.
listened
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't very good, but I think, I did not do very well at all, but it was my first meet and I wanted to see what it was about. And I wanted this new challenge for myself, and I took it on and I did it. And then I ended up hiring a coach. Or
What weight class did you do your first meet at? 132 or 123?
132. Yeah. That was kind of the weight class that I had almost always competed in. I did a couple of 148 meets, but that was only when I didn't want to compete, or when I didn't want to cut weight.
Yeah.
And I'm very much an extremist. And whenever I commit to something, I commit to it like full throttle, and I have a tendency to be a little bit obsessive over it. So I would do like really extreme cuts sometimes too, like even like 10, 12, 13 pounds, which on my frame is a lot of weight.
It's a lot of weight,
Did that bulimia or the anorexic voice ever come back in your head during that time?
Yeah, it did. And I would say even from when I had like recovered from it, like I still very much struggled with my relationship with food and the relationship that I have with my body and the way that I view my body and myself. Like that had been.
It's like come on, Nikki, just keep cutting weight. Keep cutting weight.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
So, I mean, that messes with you. And especially when you're controlling things and you're trying to manipulate things, like that becomes very obsessive and disordered. So I never relapsed and I never like fell back into those patterns super hard, but I mean, it still had some kind of hold over me.
Yeah, I can relate empathy with that part of the holdover for sure. So you hire a coach. How does that go?
Well, it went well in terms of my powerlifting performance. Not so great in the sense that he was a manipulative POS too.
Isn't it such a shame? You hear this like a lot.
You hear this
fitness
in
world, man.
the powerlifting strongman world. You hear that a lot.
Yes, and it's actually, I mean, it's a hot topic in powerlifting right now in general, with men who abuse, positions of power and blah blah blah. So
you were involved with this man?
No, not like
that.
No,
Okay,
we
good,
never
okay.
like dated
Okay, cool.
or
All right, just
did
wanna make
anything
sure.
like that. But I mean, I've had a handful of run-ins with people in that sport, in those positions that have not been appropriate and nothing like
Crazy.
Crazy,
Either way,
but-
but just,
enough where it's,
fuck, man.
the undertones are there and
Okay.
yeah. But I ended up hiring a few different coaches. I had a few different teams that I was on, and I ended up getting pretty good.
All in Jersey.
All in Jersey.
What kind of programming have you done? Like 5
West Side,
West
West Side
Side.
Conjugate.
I mean, not like a specific type of program,
Periodization,
more periodization. Yeah.
Okay.
Honestly, I just did whatever my coaches told me to do, and
How many days a week were you lifting?
5.
And how those other 2 days, what would you do?
I don't remember. I guess just
Chill. Like I was gonna say,
Just
like if you had to
exist.
chill, could
Rest?
you rest? Was that like a fight for you? Like if I'm not,
Oh yeah,
if
no,
I'm not
I
doing
could.
something in the gym today, like I have to do something.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, and that's honestly something that has continued to be a problem, honestly, until recently, where it's okay to be still, and it's okay to do nothing and just be instead of having to do all the time. You can just exist and be. So that's like a newer realization I've come to in my life, and it's kind of nice. But yes, very much problematic in terms of not being able to slow down or relax or rest or not be doing something, often in the form of exercise or sports.
So I got to ask. So when do we find out about the cancer?
Well, actually,
What about PLS?
wait, yes, we have to go back to that.
gotta know
That's
what
a
happened
whole,
with that.
that's, oh my God, that's a whole other
Did
thing.
we almost miss it?
Yes.
Nah.
We almost flew right by
Okay,
that.
cool, cool.
Lights are gonna get a little darker.
So this was mid-20s, and I was living in New Jersey.
With Uncle?
No, I was living
Call him
in,
like Uncle Rico, Napoleon Dynamite.
Uncle Rico.
I was living in Boston at the time, I think.
6 months in Boston, right?
I'm pretty sure. Anyway, it's a little bit fuzzy, but sort of in that time frame.
Okay.
And me and a few of my friends, we had gone down to Foxwoods down in Connecticut, partied all weekend. I got blackout drunk and called my father crying on the hotel bathroom floor at 1 a.m. in the morning, just telling him what my stepfather had done.
Oh,
So imagine my father
Getting that call.
Bless his soul. Like, that sucks. But I don't know, something must have just triggered my brain when I was in that state where I just felt so compelled that I had to tell him. I couldn't keep the secret anymore. There was no way.
Alcohol tends to bring those feelings
Truth serum, baby.
a lot stronger to us, and
Yep.
just I don't want to say a win for alcohol, but a win for alcohol that night.
Yeah.
maybe speak up.
And the next morning I woke up, and you know when you do something the night before and you wake up and you're like, oh shit. I have to deal with this now.
Yeah.
I had to deal with it. My father knew. And I think probably subconsciously I told my father first, because if I told my father, there was no way I was going to get away from it.
Yeah.
Like I had to address it.
Okay.
So I'd like to think that maybe my subconscious was doing me a favor by
Absolutely.
telling him
Just think
specifically.
called divine
Started the
intervention.
fight.
Yeah. So then that was a whole thing. And then eventually I ended up telling my mother, and that did not go over so great.
Yeah. What was her response to this?
She did not really believe me
Really?
or believe me. She didn't want to address that I was probably telling the truth or give any weight to it. And so then I ended up telling my uncles, because then the whole family started to find out about what had happened, and that's a whole trickling effect. And then my grandparents knew on her side. So my dad's side of the family is pretty big. I have a lot of aunts and uncles, a ton of cousins. We're all very close. My mother's side is a little bit smaller. So it's just my mom, me, my brother, and my 2 uncles and my 2 grandparents. So it's a little bit smaller knit community there. So once they knew, then I really had to address it. And my uncles, they were furious. Like, they really saved me in terms of like navigating the situation, because I wasn't thinking when I told my father and then I told my my mother and I told everybody else that I was going to end up pressing charges. Because at this point I was just like, okay, I have this dirty secret that I'm airing out now, so I guess we're just going to have to deal with this family drama. And they really helped me consider pressing charges, and so I did.
Do they offer an alternative? That's what I want to know.
I did have
Bobby, get the bats. Get the bats. You know what I mean? That kind of
I
stuff.
did have people who were like, listen, I can make this happen. And I'm like, no.
Well, God bless your soul for taking the
Absolutely
high
not.
road. Okay, I'm gonna give you that.
Good fella action.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you ended up in a
there were
hole
some-
somewhere in a cornfield.
There were some very serious inquiries about wanting to make that happen. And I said no. Because at that point, I had decided to press charges. And I was like, this is something that I have to do for myself.
Yeah.
I have to stand up for myself, and I have to fight for myself and for justice for this. And I need to take the reins here. I need to have the control. I love control, apparently. So,
Apparently,
yeah. So I pressed charges, and that was a little bit difficult to navigate because it had happened in 2 different states. So
that's what I'm saying. That
there's
really
a whole
makes,
jurisdiction sort of thing.
Because then you got to get in contact with the jurisdiction that it took place in, and then if there were any other events, it's almost like you got to re-follow the trail of incidents.
Yes.
And if it crosses state lines, and now you got to contact this jurisdiction, they got to do their own separate investigation. It becomes a dilly of a pickle, if you will.
It did become a dilly of a pickle, indeed. So I originally I did press charges in New Hampshire, and they took over the case. He was actually friends with the chief of police in my hometown. So my case was not really taken very seriously. It wasn't really pushed along. There were more serious things to take care of in a town of less than 5,000 people. I find that hard to believe. Yeah, and so he kind of jerked me around a bit throughout the investigation. There was a time even I had driven up from New Hampshire, stayed at my best friend's house overnight in Boston. I was going to drive up to New Hampshire to give, I think it was a statement or something. Or we were trying to, I think, get him on a recording admitting it. And they were going to like hook me up to mics and this whole like undercover thing. It was very cool. And I drove all the way up there. The night before, he, for whatever reason, he couldn't do it. And he had to call it off. And
Probably got tipped off, perhaps. Or this was a different jurisdiction.
no, this was the chief of police in my hometown. I think he just didn't want to do it because he didn't want to get his friend in trouble.
Yeah.
So then we ended up taking it to state police. They didn't really do anything with it, and it just kind of lay dormant for a while until a part-time part-time investigator, part-time cop.
Private investigator?
Yes, thank
PI.
you. He somehow
Magnum
came
PI
across
action.
my case, and he reached out to me wanting to take it on. Yeah. And I'm like beyond grateful
yeah.
to this man because he put the wheels in motion. Eventually, this is at this point almost 4 years later, he's finally indicted. And then 6 months after that, we go to trial. And it was the whole thing, like whole jury, like I had to testify.
Let me ask you a question. How was testifying in the court? That must have been an emotional roller coaster.
It was interesting because when I think back on it, like obviously it was not enjoyable. Like that's not how I'd like to spend my days, is testifying on stand for the other party to try and make me look crazy.
Is this for Connecticut or still New Hampshire?
Still New Hampshire. So we were not able to really use much from Connecticut in the case or in the trial. I don't really remember all the details as to why, but I'm sure something with...
Well, with the statute of limitations.
Yeah, I was gonna
back
say that.
then,
Statute of
I don't know.
Yeah,
It's really
so-
changed in New York now.
So really, we weren't able to charge him with probably as much as he really deserves to be charged with. But listen, I will take my wins where I can get them.
Absolutely.
And sorry, what was the question?
Testifying.
Oh, testifying. So yeah, at the time it wasn't great, but now in hindsight, when I think about it, like that was a really empowering moment for me because that was the time where I was able to finally stand up to him.
Fight for yourself.
And to fight for myself and also speak my truth and tell my story when this was a secret that I had kept my whole life. And it had started to destroy me in so many ways. I mean, between the eating disorders, between the promiscuity and the terrible relationships that I had with men, the patterns that I was exhibiting in terms of who I was pursuing in terms of men. Like I was not choosing good partners because of
Based off this guy.
yeah,
Your interactions. Yeah.
and everything that had, kind of shaped me into who I was based on what I had gone through. So I was at that point just wanting to get in front of him and be like, hey, like you did this to me and everybody here is going to hear about it and you're going to pay for it. I wanted justice.
Was justice served?
Yeah.
It sure was.
Okay.
He was convicted of all charges. Well, one of the charges ended up getting dropped, but that was only, I mean, that was
The jury was like unanimous. Did they say like how many jurors actually voted for
all
it?
of them. So it was interesting, funny actually, because they only deliberated for less than an hour.
Oh, so they went in there were like.
They knew going into.
Did anyone else speak? Like witness? Like I mean, there's no witnesses, but like anybody.
So my best friend did.
Yeah.
And at this point, we were not even really friends.
She was still living in Boston.
She was living in Boston.
So she never. When you left, she never left.
No, she never left.
She stayed.
And God, this poor woman, I have really put her through the ringer because we weren't friends, not because I broke the lease in Boston, but because, I mean, we were just like not vibing for a while. And I was, trying to figure out my own stuff and wasn't really thinking about how my actions would affect other people and kind of the downfall of that. But she came and she testified because she's a great person and has a huge heart. And she wanted to help me because that was really the only chance that I had was having her testimony. She was like one of the most important parts of my whole case. One of my uncles testified. My mother testified. She lied on stand. Oh yeah, we forgot to even go back to her. So throughout all of this, she never wanted me to press charges, and she tried so hard to get me to drop the charges, to not move forward with anything, and just like let everything go back to normal.
For why?
She didn't want to leave him.
Fuck that.
Like battered woman syndrome, right?
Shit.
Yeah, I mean,
say it like that,
but that's exactly what it was, and he has
like,
had.
Is that all she knew for so long?
Yes.
I think, right?
Yes.
What was her relationship with? Like now we're going back with her parents. Do we know anything about that?
Great.
Really?
She came from a wonderful home, a loving family. But I think that she actually had her own or has her own mental health issues that she's never addressed. Or maybe she has. I don't want to speak for her. I don't know her whole story, only from my point of view. But from my perspective, she was never able to seriously address them. So that's why I said even earlier, like she did the best that she could with the tools that she had.
Yeah, great quote, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so she was not supportive. And I gave her, so as I was going through the investigation, before we had even gotten him indicted, actually, she lied to the whole family and said that she wasn't with him anymore. I mean, even when my grandparents would come up, they live in Florida, they would come up, stay with her. He would stay in a hotel. She would get rid of all of the stuff in the house.
What?
This was this was an elaborate thing. So when it came out, let's say 2 years later, that they were still together, imagine my belief.
Grandparents would be like, what the fuck is going on here?
So at this point, they've all pretty much washed their hands with her. This is before we even got to trial. I was giving her until we got to trial for her to do the right thing because she is my mother and I have a lot of empathy for her, knowing her situation too, and knowing her mental health battles and just, I guess, empathizing with that's a crappy situation to be in as a mom. And obviously she didn't handle it the way that I wish she would have. But I tried to give her some grace and some leeway to figure it out.
Oh, I love that word, grace.
Because I had been battling with this my whole life. So this was not news to me, but this was all news to her, supposedly. So I wanted to give her some time to figure out what to do or how to navigate that. When she lied on the stand and threw me and my brother under the bus.
You and your brother under the bus?
Yes.
Jeez Louise.
That was it. So to this day, let me backtrack for a minute. So he did end up getting convicted on all charges. 2 felonies, 1 misdemeanor, in prison for 12 years.
Okay, so he did some time.
Yeah, so I did that. I put him in jail.
Hey.
Prison,
okay.
I should say.
He's still there.
Yeah,
today.
prison.
Yep, he's still there.
12. That's right.
Yeah.
Let's pound that out.
And then wait, you're saying that they're still together?
Yep.
What?
Did she visits him?
As far as I know, I don't have a relationship with her anymore.
I was going to say, that was going to be my next question. How's the relationship with mom?
Yep. After that,
We might have to make this into like a Netflix documentary.
Yo, sip
ready
for
for this,
real,
Zach?
bro. Listen, we're gonna sell it. Listen, Netflix, we're coming. All right, we got a nice little story for you. We need some credit. You know what I mean?
Oh my god! I
Jeez
got some good actors and
Louise.
actresses for this one.
Yeah, so she stayed with him, and from my perspective,
God.
I didn't end the relationship with her entirely because she had decided to stay with him, because she didn't support me, because her and I were never really close, actually. We had always had sort of a very tumultuous relationship. As soon as I came out of the womb, I swear we started fighting. And me and my father have had the best relationship. Like, I was a daddy's girl from the start. So I ended it more with her because I really want to be a mom. Like, that's like my life goal, is I just really want motherhood. And I would never put my unborn children potentially at risk if I were to still have a relationship with my mother and she's with him.
Oh yeah.
And what's going to happen? So he's in prison for 12 years.
He's gonna come home.
God willing, I have a baby or babies in the next handful of years. And he gets out of prison. All this time, I have a relationship with my mother. She's around my children. My children, and I'm speaking hypothetically at this point, obviously, but my children then have a relationship with their grandmother. And then in 7 years, I have to turn around and say, sorry, you can't
go over there anymore.
You can't know your grandma anymore.
Yeah.
Blocked.
So, because no way would I continue that relationship when he's out of prison and then potentially have him anywhere near my children.
Absolutely.
I don't want him knowing anything about where they go to school. Nothing. So,
rightfully so.
In an effort to protect my future family, there's absolutely no way. So I cut her off.
Power to you for that.
So what year was
That's
that?
not easy.
Thank you. It has not been easy. We're in 2023 now. This is before the cancer. It was right before the cancer, actually. 2018.
2018.
Yeah.
So he gets sentenced in 2018. So victory for you. And then we find out about cancer. How did we find out about the cancer?
About 6 months later, actually, give or take. Yeah.
Yo,
Listen, I'm keeping you on your toes.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, so about 6 months after that, it started off not feeling really well. Like, it's a little bit run down. You know, I have a little bit of chest pain, a little bit of a headache, a little bit more tired than usual, nothing crazy. All things that I can explain away to stress. Maybe I'm not eating enough red meat. That was literally one of my thoughts, is like, I must be anemic and I should eat more red meat. So I started eating more red meat. That didn't seem to help.
Okay.
It started very rapidly progressing into, I was so tired I couldn't make my bed. The color had completely lost my skin. I couldn't see really well. My vision was super blurry. I would start blacking out in between reps at the gym. And at this point, you would think a normal person would be like, hey, something's not right. I should get this checked out. But I'm still very much like, you know, I'm big into the powerlifting scene at this point, and I'm like at the top of my game. Like, I think I was even starting to prep for another meet, and I wouldn't quit until basically I had to be carried into the emergency room because I just refused to address it, which kind of goes back to how everybody else in my life at one point or another had not addressed glaring issues like my eating disorders and all of that. So I kind of did the same thing to myself, where I think subconsciously I knew something very serious was going on. I had never been sick a day in my life. I didn't even have a general physician. I don't even think I went to the doctor for anything other than when I was in college, maybe once. So all throughout my 20s, I never saw a doctor. I never needed to. I was so healthy.
So listen.
So why would I think, oh, let me go to the doctor for this headache, until the headache became a migraine so bad that it felt like somebody was drilling into my head and I couldn't get out of bed. And I ended up, I had a vacation planned, actually. So obviously I'm going to go on vacation, right? I'm going on a girls' trip to Miami. I'm not going to miss that.
Oh my God.
Well, I went to the girls' trip in Miami and was in bed the whole weekend because I was so ill.
Oh my.
The very day that I flew back, I went right to the doctor, got all this blood work, wasn't sure what was going on. I mean, I was so sick at this point.
What did the hospital say, though, when you got carried in?
Well, this was after I had gotten the blood work results back. So one day after I got home, they called me and told me I needed to go to the emergency room immediately because I needed a blood transfusion, or multiple. because my levels were at a critical point. And at this point, when I had received the news, I'm literally laying on my living room floor, like throwing up these weird nodules in my chest.
Oh.
I couldn't stand, I couldn't see, I couldn't do anything. So I get this call. I call my uncle, the one that I had lived with in Lodi on my mother's side. And he was living in Lyndhurst at the time. So this is like a 45-minute drive between where I'm living in Piscataway and where he is. So he drives all the way down there because he doesn't want me going to the hospitals near me because they weren't very great. Drives me up to Hackensack, so it's about an hour north. Brings me into the emergency room and is literally carrying me because I can't even walk by myself. And I'm there all night, and they give me 2 blood transfusions. And then they were like, oh, yeah, so you're anemic, and we're going to refer you to a hematologist. And I'm like, oh, so my thought process about the red meat was spot on. Great. Like, that's all it is. Well, that's not all it was, because then I ended up going to the hematologist who referred me to the oncology team. And that was scary because it's all wrapped up into one building. And so my first thought was like, why am I being sent to a cancer center? Like, I'm just anemic. Like, I just need some meat or some iron or something. Some B12 maybe. No. So we run through a series of tests over, I want to say 2 to 3 weeks. Bone marrow biopsy, which is very painful, by the way. Do not recommend. 0 stars.
I know. Not from experience, but I know.
It's drilling into your bone, and you're wide awake. Not a fan. I get a call. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I got a call from my doctor. I told him to call me and give me the news over the phone if it couldn't wait until I saw him next. And he told me that I have acute myeloid leukemia, and I was 29. Yeah. So my response to that was I grabbed a bottle of wine and I walked outside, and I told my neighbors, because we had like a little close knit like community. And they decided that they were going to cook a barbecue and have a whole picnic for me. So I just walked outside with my bottle of wine and got drunk in the middle of the afternoon in my front lawn with all my neighbors. So that was my reaction to that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What was the game plan after that?
So after that, I ended up telling my best friend, Carolyn, the same one throughout this whole story. Mm-hmm. And at this point, we had started to rekindle our friendship and our relationship after the trial. That kind of actually really brought us closer together. And she saved my life in so many ways. She immediately was like, what can we do? Like, what's the plan? What's your doctor's name? She came down from Boston on a train, like I think 2 days later, and stayed with me for the whole week, cleaned my whole apartment, like went grocery shopping for me, like took me to my appointments. Like, she just took over. And she did that throughout, honestly, my entire treatment, which was really amazing because otherwise I would have probably done it by myself. Like I had done everything else in my life at this point. So the treatment was, I went through 4 rounds of chemo. The first round was a week straight of nonstop chemo, 24/7, pumping through your veins. So that was no picnic. And I had lost my vision in my left eye at the time. It's since restored, which is great, but that was a little bit scary. And then I did 2 more week chemo treatments, but they weren't as intense. The first one was the worst. And in between that, I had done 2 rounds of IVF because the treatment would end up putting me into early menopause and then therefore leaving me pretty infertile, which for my big goals of wanting to be a mother is not great. So when they first diagnosed me and told me that, hearing that I would not be a mom or that I would be infertile or whatever the hell you want to call it was more devastating to me than the cancer
Diagnosis.
Like at that point, I honestly just would have rather died than not be a mom, or to have that even thought that that would be a consideration in my life to not do that. Obviously, that did not happen, and I went through treatment. And my best friend, she stayed in my hospital room every single stay that I was there, except for when I had to get a bone marrow transplant. But she slept in a recliner for a week.
Is it Hackensack?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she bossed my doctors around. She got shit done that I couldn't have done.
God bless her.
Yeah, she.
It's a good friend. I hope I hope you got something good for her.
Yeah, she's a great friend. She's a real one.
Shout out to the real friends out here that are holding down their friends, regardless of what has happened in the past. There's some good-hearted, good-spirited human beings in this world. Because, I mean, that's something that's tough to deal with. You know, it's something that you kind of did on your own, too. And, like, she took it upon herself to be like, hey, I'm going to do this with her.
Yeah, and she did.
God bless
And
her.
she really stepped up when I couldn't. And she was even there during a one hospital stay in particular, and I was really sick. So after actually the first round of chemo is the worst. They call it the Red Devil chemo that they give you, and you have such a high chance of infection from the first treatment that they usually actually keep you in the hospital for a month. And I was like, oh hell no, I got to get back to the gym. Like, sorry, but no. And my dad was getting married. So his wedding was scheduled for the 8th day after I started treatment. And I told my doctors, I'm like, I have a wedding to go to. I'm walking my dad down the aisle. I was giving him away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was a very sweet moment. Side note, he was a serial dater, and all of his girlfriends were just, oh my God, the worst after the worst after the worst after the worst, until he finally met his wife now, who is just an incredible lady. And so I was like, listen, you found a good one. I have to give you away because I have suffered from all of these girlfriends that you've brought around. Like, please let me do this. And the doctors told me, listen, your counts are not going to recover by this time. If you can get your white blood cell counts to a 1 by this day, you can go. But just know that you'll likely be back here for an infection in a week. And I'm like, that's fine. I just need a week freedom, whatever it takes. And my counts recovered. And I got let out. I walked me down the aisle. I was back in the hospital, like they said, about a week later with sepsis. And my best friend was there having to make all of these medical decisions in case I didn't wake up. And I did, obviously, because I'm still here.
You are an anointed being, I will say this. I will tell you that.
Yeah.
You have an energy about you. And during the course of this whole story, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I'm like, this woman is a warrior, bro. Legit.
Well, thank you. I
Like
appreciate
you're
that.
very welcome. I mean, I'm listening to it and I'm really like soaking it all up. And you've been through hell and high water. I mean, and you're standing here. You seem to be a very positive, very outgoing human being.
Smile on her face.
Smile on her face.
Even when I'm talking about all these horrible things that have happened to me.
you have a very light energy with you.
Thank you.
This is something that I'm starting to realize. I've been like ignoring this my whole life. I'm really good with like energies and I've always been receptive. Like I've walked into rooms and be like, nah, I don't need to be here.
I'm the same way.
Yeah, like I'll walk into a room and be like, yeah, I got to get out of here. So I'll make my rounds and then just get out of there.
She did that when she pulled in the parking lot. Like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. Who are these guys?
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, I just want to give you credit for being this strong, resilient woman and going through what you went through and still having a positive outlook on life. A lot of people, I had a friend who just recently lost her mother. Her mother had like a 20-year bout with cancer and, subsequently succumbed to it. And she is so angry right now. And there's nothing I could say or do or tell her that's going to bring her back to a place where she's happy. You know, she's questioning like, her God, whatever shit is that she believes in. And I was kind of stuck because, she called me and was like, listen, this is how I'm feeling. And it was just all anger. And I'm like, well, there's a greater purpose at work here. You know what I mean? And I can't give you the answer. Whatever it is that you believe in or whatever source that you go to will tell you it. You just have to have faith and like just be still. And that was the first time she listened to me during this whole like thing. She goes, I think you're right. I just think I need to like be still and relax. And I'm going to send her this podcast because I think this might make her come around the corner a little bit quicker.
Oh, well, I hope it does. I hope that it does help.
This definitely will. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's going to be people listening to this with some tears in their eyes,
not
bro.
even done
And
yet.
like, we're not even done yet, Oof.
So how long did the treatment really go for? Until you,
About
rang the bell?
6 months. So after I had done the chemo and the IVF, I still needed a bone marrow transplant because I had one specific gene mutation that is basically one of the worst ones to have because it increases your chance of relapse by like 85%. Like the chances of survival without a transplant is a death sentence, basically. There's like nothing you could really do. So meanwhile, all this time, I'm very naive in the beginning of my treatment because I'm like, oh yeah, like, we'll get a donor, thinking it's like
Super
I
easy.
was going to ask you
super
about
easy.
Super hard.
the donor. And
There
the
was
match.
not a single match for me on the registry. Now, normally, if you are a Caucasian, you have higher chances just because of how many people are on the registry. It's predominantly Caucasians. So if you are of any other ethnicity or background, it's much harder to find a match. Therefore, if anybody is listening who would love to donate their bone marrow or sign up, you can go to bethematch.com, and it's super easy. They send you
Put that in the description too.
yeah, they send you a kit. It's totally free. All you do is swab your cheek, you send it back, and you're just on the registry. And if you are a match with somebody, they'll contact you, and you could save a life. But there was no match for me. So that was kind of a bummer. And my brother wasn't a match. My father was a half match, but they don't prefer older donors just because the quality of the bone marrow, I guess, is not as great or the chances aren't as high. And my cousin, in the beginning of my treatment, he begged to get tested. And I was like, no, it's fine. Like my brother, he'll be a match, blah, blah, blah. They'll find a match on the registry because insurance wasn't going to approve it. Yeah. Well, they actually even denied my chemo because it wasn't medically necessary, supposedly. Yeah. So we could talk for 5 more hours on my thoughts on the medical system, but I will save that for another time.
We're going part 2 of this. Don't worry
So
about it.
after my brother wasn't a match, then insurance was like, okay, we'll test him. My cousin was a match. And that's incredibly rare, actually.
See?
So
Anointed you are.
divine intervention
Divine
that he
intervention.
was so persistent to get tested, and he was the only person on the planet who was a match to me that they could find.
First cousin?
Yeah.
Shit, man.
Yeah. So it was a half match, but listen, I'll take a half match over a no match.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he was in the military, or he is in the military. He's actually in Guam right now for like 3 years.
My cousin's in Guam right now in the Air Force.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
He's in the Navy.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a spectacular young man. And I don't only say that because he saved my life. But anyway, I digress. So he's in the military, and he was stationed in Virginia, and they wouldn't let him come up. And
The military wouldn't?
yeah, there was like a
yeah,
whole
sounds
thing with
about right.
approved days or vacation. I don't know. And they looked at my surgery or what he needed to do as an elective procedure. Meanwhile, this elective procedure
Save
was
your
the
life.
only thing that was
save
going
your
to
life.
save my life. So I got on the phone with the Red Cross. My grandparents and my grandparents and my aunt, they got on the phone with whatever mayors or any kind of government officials that they could. And it's ultimately the Red Cross that stepped in and basically told the military, like, listen, this is a life-saving procedure.
Red Cross.
And they came through, and he was able to come up and donate his marrow, and I was able to get the transplant. And
Wow. So now
Yeah.
when you see all you motherfuckers that laugh at the Red Cross when they're outside, saying that they're scamming, you give that
yeah,
dollar.
it's not just donating blood. And I didn't even think that the Red Cross would
do
do
that, yeah.
stuff like this, and they did. So
So surgery goes, he makes it success. And
yeah, and this whole time, like, I'm trying to figure out the whole IVF things. I was trying
where
to.
are you living at that time? Then?
I was still in Piscataway, but I was living in like an Airbnb closer to the hospital because they don't really want you to be any further than an hour away, or really 30 minutes away. Because if you were to get an infection, and your temperature is rising, like, you have a very small window to get treated. And I did end up getting an infection and did have to be rushed there. So
Yeah.
that's a very real thing. So I wasn't really living at home for the majority of my treatment. And yeah, so we went to the hospital and I had my whole stay there. He donated. I had to do one last round of chemo, or technically 3 last rounds of chemo. And then I did full body radiation twice a day for 4 days before the actual transplant. And that sucked. Oh my God, that sucked.
Painful?
It was the worst exhaustion and pain I've ever felt in my life. It felt like my soul had left my body. Like, I can't even describe the lifeless feeling that it leaves you with. And I managed treatment actually really well. I was still in the gym. I actually pulled the deadlift PR halfway through treatment.
Did they know that you were in the gym?
Shit. Fucking warrior.
Sort of. So it's funny because in the beginning
Because they were still worried about infections?
yes. So I had to get a PICC line in my
Like
arm.
a fucking bubble suit deadlifting?
I mean, I broke so many rules. Anybody who's listening to this who
Don't do what you did.
Don't do what I
I have
did.
to put a disclaimer on here.
Yes, seriously. But they tell you because you have a PICC line, so it's like an exposed, like IV sort of thing. That's the way that they can administer your chemo and medications, especially if you do end up there in a critical position. They can easily, get you whatever it is that you need. But that opens you up to infection. And I didn't know at the time, but there's also a really high risk of brain bleeding from like the treatment and just like everything. And yeah, so I wasn't aware of that, and I didn't really know that was the risk I was running this whole time that I was lifting in the gym amidst cancer treatment. So, I mean,
People in the gym knew?
oh
You
yeah,
have the thing coming
yeah.
out, IV
Actually,
or-
I don't want to hear no excuses from nobody. Get your ass to the gym. This girl
what was the
dead.
deadlift PR?
360.
Golly.
Yeah.
360. I would give
You know
a
what?
good.
I'm going to hit it with the applause for that.
Yeah, hit that, man.
I got to hit that applause for
I would
that.
probably say 30,
Scheiße.
maybe 30%. That might be, I think 30% of men within the New York City Police Department probably can't bet.
Absolutely, bro. Absolutely.
And Nikki's here pulling that with cancer.
Yeah, so that was cool, and
man.
I really do think that because I continued to exercise and lift. Listen, I think I pushed it way further.
How was the self-talk in your mind, in your labyrinth? Like, were you like, I'm going to do this? Like, I'm going to make this and this is it? Or
I just wanted my life to be as normal as possible. Like, I was so badly just not wanting to be the cancer girl. And at this point, because I was so heavy into the powerlifting community, and they really stepped up for me because my best friend created a GoFundMe, and I didn't want her to.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I got this. This is me being Little Miss self-independent. I can do everything. I'm like, no, it's fine. No big deal. We raised over like $30,000. And it is the only reason that I financially, I say this loosely, survived, because I'm still in medical debt now. But it's the only reason that I was able to pay my bills, not have to move in with family, keep my apartment. Like, they raised a lot of money for me. So I'm like very indebted to the whole community for really showing up for me in my moment of need. But I really just wanted my life to be as normal as possible. So I did what I did, or what I had to do to survive, to, put blinders on, just get through it, just kind of
one day at a time.
And I mean, being diagnosed with cancer at 29 years old, when I was otherwise a perfectly healthy person, was shocking. It was devastating. I mean, it just totally rocked my world, because now I'm face to face with the potential of dying.
Let me ask a question. Did the thought of like death creep into your mind?
Yes.
And if so, what was like your response to that? I got to ask this question because somebody asked me a question, right? And the question was, if someone gave you an envelope with the date of your death, would you open it? And I said, absolutely not. Because I try to live my life right now as we speak, 24 hours at a time. I don't look too far down the road. I don't pay attention to my past, because there's a lot of things that have happened to me that I've, persevered and got through. So I don't look backward. I'm like one step at a time. So it's 24 hours at a time. That's how I live. If someone said, hey, listen, man, like in this envelope right here, this is like the day you're gonna, I said, no, keep that shit right there, because I don't want nothing to do with it. Like, what was your mindset? Because you were in the trenches, like you're getting chemo. You said you feel exhausted.
Yeah,
like
I was, so I guess we can backtrack for a minute, because at the time I started dating this guy, and I was just infatuated with him. And I mean, like anybody that or in the past, I would have a really strong attachment to. And I would just think that I'm so in love with them, that this is my soulmate. Like I would just be obsessed with them. And I fell really hard for this guy. We started dating. I say dating loosely because he doesn't really consider that we were dating, but we were. It's very weird. So I was like kind of his dirty little secret and like not public about anything. But we were very much like together. He would come to my infusions. We would, or he would like go grocery shopping for me, like do all these boyfriendy things. Anyway, so he had gifted me this book called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. And
I'll write that down, sir.
that book changed my life. And it was the first, like, I guess, body of words that I could sort of make to understand and relate to a little bit. But it also proved to be like a guiding ship of like how to overcome this really hard thing, which was cancer and the potential of death. And it really just started to get the wheels turning in my brain to think of things differently and to change my perspective on life. And this is why even to this day, I say that cancer was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Really?
I love that it happened to me.
She's like
and
a
I know that
stoic mindset. Like,
I know that sounds crazy to
no,
a
it does
lot
not.
of people maybe,
It does
but
not sound crazy at all.
it gifted me a lifetime of perspective that I would have never had otherwise. I mean, sure, I have all these other perspectives from every other trauma in my life, but facing death or the potential of death is very different than, and not to say that one is better than the other because all trauma is trauma. Yeah. But that was a little bit
different.
Yeah.
Did they give you any reasons or like causes of like how you ended up being
or was this
diagnosed
like
with
hereditary
cancer?
or something?
No.
Some genetic anomaly.
Remember like 45 minutes ago, I was like, I'll wait. That's it. Like,
yeah.
Anything?
So no, because there's nothing that really runs in my family with it. My grandfather had cancer twice on my dad's side. He and I are actually like two peas in a pod.
You and your grandfather?
Yeah. And he had cancer twice. So he's a 2-time cancer survivor.
Do you know what kind it was?
He had lymphoma, which is a blood cancer. And mine was blood cancer. Yeah. So they think there could be some link between that.
Some hereditary something.
But honestly, I believe that it was from my traumas as a kid. And I believe that the timing is not a coincidence that this happened 6 months or so after my trial. Well, it was really more almost a year to the trial, but 6 months after sentencing, and when I had the opportunity to give my victim statement or my victim impact statement, although I don't like to say victim, but that's what it was. And I think that I had to go through the trial first before the universe or God or whomever had this, this horrible thing happen to me, because I wouldn't have been able to survive it if I hadn't addressed that first. Like if I hadn't started to heal from that trauma and started the process of learning how to fight for myself, how to stand up for myself, how to take control over my life, all of those things. And that really put that mindset into motion. And then 6 months later, I get cancer. There's no coincidence.
Yeah, it's funny. I know it's a somewhat similar story. A friend of mine had went through like a very tumultuous situation with her then husband, and she ended up developing some like weird cancer. And thank God she beat it, but like they have to closely monitor her situation. But she had went through a shit ton of trauma, and then that got her to that spot. And this is why I try to tell people, man, honestly, like, try to control what you can control, and how you react to certain things. Like, I'm very big on peace. Like, that's like I'm all about that right now, because I have lived many lives, and in that whole little jumble of life, I've experienced a lot of heartbreak, some tumultuous things have happened. But I think the older I've gotten, the more wiser I've become. And I know I could control how I respond and react to certain things. And that has saved my life because I used to be a very impulsive young man. I'd be the guy quick to punch somebody in the mouth or something, or do something outlandish. And
I mean, same.
And you can't live your life like that. The outcome is that you're either going to end up, you're risking your freedom, or you're going to do something you're going to regret later on down the line. Like I've been posed with several different, opportunities to do like really malicious things in response to some things that have happened to me, and I've taken the higher road. And for whatever reason, I'm still here, and there's some people that I know that I grew up with that didn't take that, outlook, and they're not around anymore. So I'm just like forever grateful that I'm able to wake up, like just do things, move freely, just do what I can. I have a lot of outward gratitude because I know like this life should never be taken for granted. Like people go to bed and they think that you're going to wake up tomorrow and you're going to be 100% health, or that the people around you are going to remain there. And that's not the case. Life is very fragile.
Life comes at you fast.
And yeah, man. Amen to that. But I've gained so much inspiration from this story, man.
Yeah, I'm really happy you said that, because that's what I was going to bring up in the beginning. Have you ever heard of the psychologist Gabor Mate?
Yeah.
Okay, so he just wrote a book not too long ago, within the year, called The Myth of Normal.
Oh, I haven't read that one.
And it's basically like the myth of normal, how like I'm normal, you're not normal, or this person's normal and they're not normal, right? But like, what is the definition of?
Listen, I'll tell you, I'm not normal.
What is the definition of normal? But in his book, and when I'm done with this, I'm gonna bring out my phone and see if I can find some, because I did a post and I had it, and I wish I was prepared for this. Studies and statistics on primarily females with, I'm not a therapist, right? You never even saw one, but
no,
we can know that.
Which is the surprising thing.
I don't want to say we can know, but like clinically diagnosed with like PTSD. You said about the anxiety, depression, probably the bulimia. Who knows if there's even like bipolar in there when they're going up and down. Who knows? I'm not saying, but
yeah,
females for some reason are, and I don't have the number. I'm gonna try to look it up. Highly more likely to develop cancer, and ovarian cancer was in there. So I was like, if she says ovarian cancer, I'm gonna write the stress, right? So there was a girl, and like trigger warning in the book, that she was feeling like symptoms, like right, but she was raped, and she never told anybody until she was diagnosed with cancer, and like no one in her family was cancer, So I don't mean to, I'm very happy that you brought that up, because it's just like people might be listening and be like, oh man, like that's like bullshit, but like no, it's not. People don't understand, and like there's a book out there.
Stress.
And I'm reading right now called Brain Energy. Dr. Chris Palmer, he's a psychiatrist in Harvard. He's
Brain
actually
Energy?
He's actually going to be our guest speaker on Responder Talk tomorrow.
Oh, very cool.
Okay. And he talks about metabolic health. Okay. Is mental illness is metabolic health of the brain, and how they're so connected. And the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, and the cells. And what happens? What is cancer, right? When the cells get destroyed and they don't grow back properly, the destruction of the cell, it's all linked.
Oh, yeah. And imagine
100%.
just living under that kind of stress, like in your body, on a cellular
For literally
level.
20 years of your life.
Yeah.
I don't know how. And then not saying what is powerlifting, right? It's intense stress to our bodies and our muscles and our nervous system over and over, right? So what that happened, like POS, like
it created a whole snowball effect.
And maybe you were
life.
just like, your mind was so focused on like, I got to bring this motherfucker down. Is there an exact date where like we don't know when like cancer has been in your body for that long, right? We have no idea.
No idea. Leukemia does develop very rapidly.
Okay.
So, when I started exhibiting symptoms, it must have been less than 2 months. About 2 months before I was diagnosed and in the emergency room. So it happened very quickly. But I really think that after the trial and sentencing and all of that, like, it just released, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Because it's weird when I think back to even the trial, and when I first heard that guilty 12 times in a row. Actually, technically, like almost 42 times in a row, because they had to go through, each juror had to say guilty for every single count.
Shit.
So that was just like music to my ears,
Yeah.
hearing that over and over and over and over. That was amazing. But it felt like an out of body experience. Like it felt like something had been lifted off of my shoulder. Like,
Amen.
like not even just like a weight lifted off my shoulder, like something visceral and deep within my soul. It just evaporated. Like it was like I was looking down on myself. This probably sounds insane, but like that's the best that I can explain the feeling. And then I think that just got all of the wheels turning, and boom, cancer 6 months later. What a party.
This might have been the heaviest podcast I've ever done in my entire life.
I tried to warn you guys.
And I've been doing this a long time, man. I've been doing this since like 2018. And this is the heaviest one I've done. I think I've recorded over 100 something podcasts. I got some skin in the game, and this one, this took me for a ride.
Yeah, sorry.
No, sorry at all, man. The greatest part about podcasting is hearing different people's stories, their views, their opinions, their experiences, peeking into the window of somebody else's life. It's very interesting, and I said it before, like you still have a very warm, beautiful soul. Some people would be jaded and callous and is just upset at life. But even what you said, like cancer was like one of the best things to happen to you. You don't really get people who have that kind of lens on life, So.
Well, I appreciate that, and I wasn't always this like warm, positive.
Oh yeah, no.
Like,
I'm pretty sure that this is just where life has brought you.
I mean, I feel like I've lived so many different lives, and there have been so many versions of me. Like even when I think back to my younger years, that was such an unhealed version of myself. Like I can just see all of the ways in which I'm acting out and the behaviors that I've exhibited, the actions that I've taken, the actions that I haven't taken, how I've treated myself, how I've treated others, how I've talked to myself, how I've looked at myself, my relationship with myself. And those are all things that you carry throughout all this time that you're trying to deal with and navigate these really hard things. And I really think it took cancer for me to get my shit together, for me to open my eyes and to see everything that was the issue and start to try to unpack a little bit at a time, my attachment issues, how I grew up, my inner child, like all of these things that I'm just like chipping away at, or have been chipping away at, rather, to be the best version of myself, to take control over my life once again and break away from the narrative that I was a part of my whole life.
Yeah. All right. Well, Frankie, we got like an hour. This is like almost an hour, 40 minutes, bro. We got to wrap it up.
Good shit. I'm just trying to find this. I got a whole study of women and ovarian cancer, but yeah, just go back to that book, Gabriel Mate.
Yeah, but that's a very real thing. And I know it sounds pretty woo-woo to some people, but I mean, that's your body is in that fight or flight mode. It's survival mode.
Ovarian cancer.
Yeah.
Oh, listen, I can definitely relate because I've heard this before. So
it's actually my dad who mentioned this to my doctor, and this is before I even started thinking about that link. And he's like, "Oh, well, I read an article that sometimes trauma can like express itself into cancer or whatever." And my doctor was like, "Actually, yeah, that can happen." So listen, my doctor says so it must be the case.
And so this story here, have you really shared like any groups or shared this like, or ever think about like joining like groups like that or no?
I haven't, but yes. And actually it's even interesting timing that you guys reached out to me to do this podcast, because I've actually always wanted to share my story on a greater, well, I haven't always wanted to share my story on a greater scale, but I have felt an urge or like a need to share my story.
We're very honored, 100%.
absolutely.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm honored to be here because I've always had sort of like an imposter syndrome. Like, oh, people have definitely had it way worse than me. So like, who am I to speak about this? Even though, I mean, on paper, it's like trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma. So I think I'm an expert at this point. A little bit of like
survivor's guilt. Like, well, I'm still here, so.
Yeah. Yeah. And because I know I am so grateful for the many amazing things that I have in my life. Like, look, my life has not been easy. I have had hardship after hardship after hardship, but we all do. We all have hard things. I think maybe mine's a little bit more compounded, but that's not to take away from the beautiful things in my life, the blessings that I have in my life. And I think because I lean so heavy into the gratitude, or I make an effort to at least, that it's able to offset some of the tragedy, you know?
You will. Yeah.
But because of that too, I look at it like, well, not so much now, but I have in the past where it's like, well, you know, people come out of war with no legs. Like people lose their whole families in house fire. Like really, really crazy things happen to people. So in my eyes in the past, it's been like, oh, a little childhood sexual abuse, a little cancer. That's nothing. Because for so long too, that was my reality. So I was like, oh, this is normal. People just endure. People just have shit hands at life sometimes.
Yeah.
That's what people go through, I guess.
Play the cards you dealt with, yeah.
Yeah. So I was always like, oh, who am I to speak about this?
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been wanting to actually share that a little bit more. So it's kind of divine timing, I guess you could say.
Yeah, like listen, man, we are the king of that. I'll tell you that.
Thank you.
You want to ask a little exit questions?
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, this is gonna be. I'm definitely gonna. This is like a great zen for me. Thank you for helping me stay sober tonight. 100%.
It's my pleasure.
Going to. Hopefully they heard it. I'll say it again. Another thank you. Thank you for helping me stay sober tonight. A few questions for you before we wrap up.
I got some answers for you.
Some lighthearted ones. It ain't none too hard, so don't worry about it.
First question.
Yes.
Usually not on the list here, but not only are you a emotional warrior, okay, you're a physical warrior as well. Why the switch from powerlifting to combat sports now, jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai?
Yes.
So it's really quick. Why switch, and what do you enjoy better?
So jiu-jitsu for sure. So after I had gotten sick and after I was finished with treatment and everything, I was trying to get right back into powerlifting and just like resume life as normal. Life was no longer normal. My body was totally different. It just didn't fit in my life anymore. And I tried to make it fit. I forced it until the universe or God or whatever deity you believe in really made me have to leave, because I was pushing my body so hard that I ended up, and I don't even think this is from just that time period, but just the accumulation of years of putting my body under that much stress. I ended up hurting my back really bad, and I herniated and have bulge discs in almost my entire lumbar spine. So this was before a competition that I was trying to do, and I was in meet prep, and so when I'm in competition mode, I'm like blinders on, like nothing else is going to come in the way, and I was still trying to train through it. I was still trying to do this meet. For some reason, I had it in my mind like I have to do this meet, because then that means that I'm back, I'm like really in it. And I had competed before this particular time period, but I like really needed to see this through. Then I got into a really bad car accident. This is also a crazy story, just to like sidebar for a second. It was like lightly snowing. I was behind a tractor trailer. I was trying to move over. They were also moving over. They didn't have their directionals on. So by the time that I saw that, it was way too late. And so I had to drive, like swerve off the road so that way I wouldn't get hit or run over by this tractor trailer. I ended up bouncing into the guardrail, and that flipped me, did basically a 360 across the highway, across like 3 different lanes. And then I T-boned a tractor trailer, a different one. And
how long ago was this?
This was 2 years ago. I walked away with almost no injuries.
Okay.
I had like a slight hip injury from
That's the least he fucking wants.
Yes, no, seriously.
This is the female version of David Goggins. If you don't read the book, if you don't write a book.
Yeah, you got to write a book.
Okay, seriously. So I've been told my whole life, honestly, that I need to write a book, and
yes.
I've actually decided that I am.
Yeah, write that book.
Who's going to carry these motherfucking boats, man? Holy crap.
Yeah, so at that point, I was like, listen, this is not serving me. Like, this is causing me more pain physically and emotionally, because I just wasn't in that place anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I love powerlifting for what it brought me. The friendship, some of my best friends, most of my best friends actually, are from the sport.
Okay.
And they have been lifelong
It
friends.
served that purpose in that time of your life.
Yes. Yes. But like anything, I mean, nothing is meant really to be with us forever. And we
yeah.
have different seasons and different phases of our life. So at that point, I just realized, like, listen, if this massive car accident isn't going to get me to like walk away, I don't know what is. So I just quit. And I decided that it was no longer for me. And I walked away, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to do next. And I can't just work out. Like, I don't know what that's like of not doing something, not even
To
like
punish myself.
yeah, not even like in a competitive, like want to compete against other people way, which I do. I love competing. Like I just have such a competitive nature that I feel like I thrive in that kind of arena. And so like I'm always hungry for it. So just working out is like so boring to me.
So mundane.
But there was my gym, my martial arts gym, AMA that I train at now is right next to my lifting gym. And I had done Muay Thai for like 3 months. I mean, it was nothing. It was like a drop in the pan. Actually, when I was still going through my eating disorders, I was like trying to figure all that out. So I'm like, this seems fun. Like, let me try this again. So I joined, started Muay Thai, did Muay Thai for a year, and then I switched over to Jiu-Jitsu. One of my gym friends, and we weren't even really good friends at this time, but she was like basically pressuring me to try over Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm like, no, it's fine. But a year later, I decided to, and then I've been doing Jiu-Jitsu ever since. I'm only a white belt, but
Same here. So
it's awesome.
it's a
It
different
is
world.
so much fun. Yeah, and it challenges you and like your mindset in a totally different way that strength sports do. I mean, you're face to face with another person trying to cause harm to you. So then you have to go back into that fight or flight mode, but like in a calm way, not, with the adrenaline and being crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So the very long-winded answer of that is Jiu-Jitsu is my favorite between all the disciples.
Well, thank you for sharing that. All right, so now to the quick questions.
Yeah, I'll try to
Okay.
keep them quick. I get very long-winded.
We
One
don't mind.
meal to eat for the rest of your life, the same meal, and you don't have to worry about the the macronutrient intake or anything. Anything you eat is how you're gonna stay the same.
Ravioli.
No hesitation. First time we got
Oh my
ravioli.
God.
That's it. Just
Ravioli.
What kind?
I don't even care. I just love ravioli. Love it.
It's like ravioli. That's it.
When I was sick, actually, and maybe I have like PTSD from it. I don't know, or some weird like link.
You just kept
brain
eating
link.
raviolis.
So I had kept most of my weight on throughout
Raviolis
treatment, except for
heal
after
cancer.
treatment, and so I just ate a shit ton of ravioli. I mean, other whole nutrient dense foods too, but I had lost so much weight. And I was trying to gain weight, and I have a really hard time gaining weight because I'm like more, petite person. It's a little bit difficult. I was just eating mass amounts of ravioli, and I just love it. I don't know.
Ravioli it is.
Yeah.
Ravioli it is. Chef Brian Nicky.
Yeah.
2 lifting movements. We're not gonna say. I don't want to say like gym. You might go like Kimura and like butterfly sweep, butterfly guard. 2 movements you could do every day. You can only do 2 every day.
Lifting? Or does
Yes,
it?
lifting. And you're not going to get sore, but you only have 2. You can only choose 2 movements.
Squats,
every day
number
for the rest of
one.
your life. Okay.
It's
Squats.
like my favorite. I
Squats.
love squatting. And maybe Turkish get-ups.
Ooh, that's a
Nice.
first. No
Yeah.
one's ever said I almost broke my wrist doing
help your
Turkish
BJJ.
get-ups.
It's-
No, thank you.
Horrible and very difficult, but it's the one exercise that I feel the most connected to my body, and I really like that feeling.
It's like yeah,
Claro que sí. I like that. Okay.
Yeah,
and it's
So-
perfect for the mats.
exactly.
Perfect.
There's so much
It's literally
carryover
transition,
and
yeah.
transfer.
You know, you tell me I gotta start doing Turkish get-ups.
Yes.
Fuck.
Plant-based
good for shoulder
poppy,
health.
Plant-based. The real Jumpman get up. I'll have to figure out a name for that. But where are we? We are at 1 meal, 1 person to hang out with, dead or alive, and you don't have to never met them before.
Oh,
Yeah. For the day of who you are right now in this present moment. Who do you want to spend a day with? Maybe take them to BJJ, put a gi on them, eat raviolis.
Oh, this is actually a tough
That's a great question. Yeah. Don't fuck it up. No pressure.
Wow. Dead or alive, and nobody that I have met. or nobody.
Or
that
it could
I've
have
met.
been. It could have been someone that you met, or it could be someone that that maybe you always wanted to meet. Someone famous, someone you looked up to. Could be a family member.
Probably my grandpa, actually.
Oh,
Yeah,
I like that.
he's the one that he's the 2-time cancer survivor, and he and I have like such an interesting bond and connection.
It's a connection, yeah.
He's just an amazing man and has a lot of really wise life perspectives that he's passed down to me. And if I could spend every single day with him for the rest of my life, imagine how much knowledge and wisdom I would have.
That's a fucking great answer. Wow.
Plus, he's just so cool. Like, I would love to spend time with him, more time with him.
Yeah, thank you.
Love it.
You leave, right? You leave the apartment, and we send you the message. Wait, come back. You forgot something, and now you're like, all right, now really, what the fuck's going on here?
No, I'm gonna think about this the whole way home now.
So you open up the door, and we're like, we need you to come over here. And you're like, now you want me to come through the wall, around the wall here and check it out. And there's just like a tarp hanging off the picture frame. We open it up, and there's a door, and it's a time machine. You can go anywhere you want in the future or the past. It could be 5 months ago, 5 years ago, 50 years ago, 500 years ago, as who you are now. We're like, all right, we'll see you, Nikki. White sweatshirt on. We'll get you a red jacket. And you're just going. Where would you go?
I would probably go back to my childhood, not to stop what had happened. I'm glad that that happened too. I'm actually glad that everything in my life has happened. It's the reason that I am the way that I am now and who I am now. If it happened, then it was meant to happen for whatever reason, for whatever greater purpose, greater lesson. It's up to me to figure out what that is. But I would go back to younger me and try to instill some kind of wisdom in my younger self to just keep going, to be strong, to, I don't know, give myself some kind of encouraging words to know how to better brave the storm maybe and sort of navigate whatever hardships that I would end up encountering in my life, which there's a lot of them. So
That's the first one we got,
Yeah,
I
that's
think,
the
right?
first time someone's ever said that.
yeah.
Well, with that, I'm speechless, and thank you.
Thank
you
you.
very much. We had a great time, even though there's, the ups and downs, but like Jay said, your energy, your positivity, your character in general is just amazing. And we need a lot more people like you, and this shows that recovery is possible. And Jay, you have anything for us?
First time I'm speechless, bro.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm just honored to be sitting in this room during this podcast and just being present and in this space and in this energy right now, because it's good stuff.
Feel safe, right?
Yes,
It's like
absolutely.
safe.
Well, listen, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity to even come on here and share my story, and that you guys and I hope other people are wanting to listen to. So this has been honestly a great privilege. So thank you.
Thank you again. For our Reps for Responders family, if you are subscribed to the podcast, please like, share, tell a friend to tell a friend. It helps us reach a bigger demographic, helps us get out there, maybe get some more sponsors. We're looking to do that as well. So please, if you like this episode, share it. Send this to somebody who might be going through some things, and maybe if they feel like giving up or something like that, you send them this, and you hear what this woman's been through, and maybe they'll get up on the good foot and get after it. All right. So with that being said, have a blessed and productive one, and try not to be a shitty human being, y'all. Enjoy.